Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Picardcast. This is a very special episode where we will be looking back at the whole series kind of in a retrospective way and talking about all the different characters and how they've progressed from episode 1 to episode 10. And looking forward to it. I am your host today, Rebecca. And joining me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Brooke. Welcome back, Brooke.
Hi.
Well, I just, I think back to when we were planning, our show, and Picard seemed so far away. And, we went to New York Comic Con last year. We did the Picard experience, and we were like, oh, feels like it's never going to get here. And now here we are doing our end of the series retrospective.
It's been over for 2 weeks.
I know, it's crazy. It is crazy. It just went by so fast, but I'm so glad we were able to do it, and I'm happy we could take, an episode here to kind of look back on the series as a whole. And so, Brooke and I have broken down every episode here quite thoroughly, so we're not going to do that again. We'll be here for probably 20 plus hours. So, but we are going to kind of plus, why would you want to hear that again? Like, you could just go back and listen to the other episodes. We are going to go back and we're going to talk a little bit about the characters, how they've progressed, and, kind of what we thought about them. And I say, why bury the lead? Let's start with the main man himself, Jean-Luc Picard, of course, played by Sir Patrick Stewart. From episode 1, when we first reconnect with Picard, he's definitely a man sort of just waiting around for his life to end. It feels like, he's on the vineyard. He's got his dog number 1. He's got, people who remember him, but sort of think of him as almost like a dinosaur or a fossil. And then we watch his character progress from there all the way to the end of the series, which, by the way, everybody, I don't know why you would be listening to this if you never watched the whole series, but we are going to spoil everything, of course, as we always do. The series ends with Picard as an android. If you had asked me at the beginning of the series or the season if I thought that would happen, that would not have been, I would have said no. That does not seem likely. But I want to hear your thoughts, though, too, Brooke. Like, what do you think of Picard's progression from when we first meet him to where we are? What did you think of his story arc throughout these 10 episodes?
I liked it because he started out not exactly the Picard that he had been. I just been sitting around writing history books and sort of moping around and in this interim, and then we saw him go back into space and kind of really get back that Picard mentality, and I really enjoyed that. And also, I did not bother me as much that he became an android as I thought it would when we started speculating that might happen. So yeah, overall, I liked it. And I mean, and it's still, there were times like with TNG where he, you may not necessarily agree with him because he might be kind of a jerk sometimes, because that would happen sometimes. And I was glad that they stayed true to that, even though so many people love Picard. You can't make him be infallible, because what good character is that?
Right.
So, but I was overall pretty pleased with his whole arc.
Yeah, I was too. I think one thing that There were a couple of things about his character arc that I really appreciated specifically. One of the things was I felt like Picard was forced to face his own arrogance and his own, effing hubris as the
and his own mortality.
And for sure his mortality, yes. But I think specifically speaking about like his arrogance, there were several episodes specifically where I'm thinking of, like, for example, when he went to see Riker and Troy, and he's not telling Will everything, and Will says to him, "Oh, there's that famous Picard arrogance, only you get to know all the facts. Everyone else is on a need-to-know basis." And even later on in that same episode, when Soji pushes past him and like kind of shoves him, and Troy says to him, "You deserved that. You're not taking into account how she feels about all of this. You're just once again charging in with your arrogance and thinking you're infallible and taking charge." And there were many moments like that throughout the whole the season. That one I think was pretty strong, and because Riker and Troy are like family to Picard, you know that when they're telling him this, it comes from a place of love. Like, it comes from a place of, I want you to see this aspect of yourself so you can improve yourself, so you can get better at helping her. And then even too, like when we meet Elnor's character, how he felt betrayed by Picard all those years, and then Picard shows up like, "Well, now I need your help, so I'm back in your life." And it is...
Rafi, he did the same thing too.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So all of these people that he kind of forgot about because he didn't need them, or he was so sort of introspective, I guess, and now, well, I need you, so here I am. And it's like, you do understand why that's really not cool to just show up after years of neglect and not reaching out and not being a true friend. Now you show up and go, "Well, I need your help, so now you have to help me." I felt like Picard constantly had to have that kind of... He had to face it many times before he really learned it, I think. And I think by the end of it, I think he did learn it. I mean, he's not perfect, of course, but like, I think he did learn that he had to learn to share those responsibilities with other people and not just keep it all to himself.
One thing I liked about that is just that, you were talking about Will and Deanna being kind of like family and being able to tell him, when he's doing stuff like that, because it seems like he showed some of that sort of arrogance in TNG, but people around him didn't always call him out on it.
Right.
Like, sometimes they did, but it was more other species, or you know what I mean, or people, but it usually wasn't like his crew ever saying anything to him. And so that's why it was really great that Troy's just like, "You deserve that."
Oh, I totally agree. I'm thinking back to the episode of TNG where Q throws the Enterprise out like way into space and forces them to meet the Borg sooner than they should have.
Yeah.
All because Picard won't let Q join the crew. And Picard makes a statement like, "Well, whatever happens out here, we're ready for it." And Q's like, "Oh, really?" And then he throws them into this meeting with the Borg. And it's not until Picard admits that they're out of their league, they're over their head, and that they do need Q to get them out of this, that Q rescues them. But then Q does tell him that it took humility to say that, and that a lesser man would have held on to his ego and said, I don't need you. So that's an extreme example, of course, but we do see how what you're saying is right. Like, sometimes it took an outside person from Picard's inner circle to make him see that.
Mm-hmm.
And here we're seeing people who are within his inner circle doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's because now it's like years and years later, and they're no longer under his command, of course, and all that. But yeah.
But like, it's just sort of interesting because it seemed like his crew would sort of be like, well, he's doing what he thinks is right, so that's why we're doing this. You know what I mean? Before. And I guess sometimes people kind of do that, like, well, he's the boss, in real life.
Mm-hmm. It's a different dynamic now.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's almost like, it's like when you graduate school, and then it's like 20 years later and you run into like your high school teacher and you're like, oh my God, Mr. Smith. And he's like, oh, please call me Joe. And you're like, what? Like, it's in your mind, it's like, I can't do that. But it's 20 years later, you're both adults and it's a different dynamic now. So you could have a different relationship. And that's kind of where, it's kind of like where Troy and Riker and Picard are at. They're at a different dynamic.
I know what I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's funny how he was, he never really, I mean, not that he never did. It was over the course of that 7 years, he wasn't, oh, don't you know who I am, like, all the time? But he did it a couple times in this, like, oh, tell him it's me. Oh, well, we tried that, or whatever. And I really liked that as another way to knock him down a peg.
Yeah, I mean, for sure we saw Picard also, as you said, facing his own mortality. We saw that even in just episode 1, where he is with Daj and they're like running away from that Romulan, death squad that are like trying to get her. Mm-hmm. And he can't keep up with her. Like, he physically can't climb the stairs as fast. He can't run as fast. He's not the man he used to be because he's physically aged. Then, of course, we learned about his brain defect, mm-hmm. which, TNG did hint about, or more than hint about, I should say. TNG did bring up. And then finally, in the last episode where he actually does, I mean, he dies from it, and they're only able to save him by, mapping his brain and basically transferring his personality into the golem.
It's like Contact, the movie Contact. Like, they just so happen to have another one of those things. Well, they just so happen to have an android they could put his mind into.
Oh, look, I just happen to have this extra. By the way, that totally bothered me about the movie Contact.
Yes.
That completely bothered me that they spent, no one could ever build this giant thing that we're building, and it cost $80 bajillion, and then this guy on the other side of the world is like, oh, you mean this thing that I just happened to build? Oh, get out of here. Give me a break. Dumb plot.
It's like, oh, yeah, I have one of those in my backyard.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like this one? Yeah, it's a bit much. Oh, you're dying? Too bad I don't have a golem. Oh, wait, I do. Like, it's like, this is pretty funny. But
oh my God, that would have been hilarious if it was like, oh, Picard's dying. But too bad we don't have this android golem. It's like, and then
tell him what he's won, honey.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It's all Price is Right style.
Yeah, I'm telling you. It's how much is this golem? I'll wager $2.99. $1.01. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, golems are cheap, apparently.